The MIT acceptance letter trembled in my hands, a golden ticket that should have sparked celebration. Instead, my parents' response cut deep. "We've already committed our education fund to your sister's medical school. They called computer science just a hobby while funding her dreams completely." 10 years later, when my tech startup reached a $40 million valuation, those same parents showed up at my office requesting investment opportunities. I smiled and showed them exactly what I'd learned from their practical financial planning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The acceptance letter trembled in my hands as I read it for the 5th time. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Computer Science, 60% Merit Scholarship. The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes, not just from joy but from the crushing weight of what I knew would come next. Our modest Phoenix. Home had always been filled with talk of potential and futures, but not all futures were treated equally. My sister Vanessa's path to medical greatness had been charted since she correctly named all the bones in the human hand at age 8. My journey into coding and software development had always been tolerated as a peculiar hobby, something I would grow out of eventually. I took a deep breath and walked to the kitchen where my parents were preparing dinner, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables providing a steady backbeat to my racing heart. "Mom, Dad, I got in," I said, sliding the letter across our kitchen table, trying to keep my voice steady. My father, Dr. Miguel Rivera, wiped his hands on a dish towel before picking up the letter, adjusting his reading glasses with the practiced precision of a surgeon. My mother, Elena, leaned over his shoulder, her initial smile fading as she reached the financial details. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken calculations. "Alex, we've talked about this," my father finally said, placing the letter down carefully, as if it might shatter. "MIT is, well, it's just not practical for our family situation." "But I got a scholarship," I countered, pointing to the figure. "That covers 60% of the tuition. I can work part-time for the rest." "This is MIT, Dad, one of the best computer science programs in the world." My mother's sympathetic head tilt was worse than any outright rejection. "Sweetheart, even with the scholarship, the remaining costs are substantial. We've already committed to supporting Vanessa through Johns Hopkins. You know how competitive medical school is. She needs to focus entirely on her studies without the distraction of part-time work." "What about my studies?" I asked, hating how my voice cracked. "Don't I deserve the same support? My acceptance rate was under 7%. Do you know how competitive that is?" My father sighed, not meeting my eyes. "Alex, be reasonable. Your sister is pursuing medicine, a stable, respected profession with guaranteed employment. Computer programming is, well, it's a hobby that some people turn into jobs, but it's unpredictable. What happens when all those tech jobs move overseas or when the next recession hits and startups collapse?" I bit back my frustration. "Tech jobs have been growing for decades, Dad. The biggest companies in the world now are tech companies. The scholarship committee obviously sees potential in me." "We're not saying don't go to college," my mother interjected, her voice taking on that soothing tone she used with difficult patients at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. "There's Arizona State right here in town. Their computer program is adequate. You could live at home, save money. That's the sensible path for someone with your interests." My interests. As if my passion for coding was equivalent to collecting stamps or playing video games, a diversion, not a career. As if my perfect scores in advanced math, the coding, competitions I'd won, the app I'd built that half our school was using, all of it was just a phase I would outgrow. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, surrounded by acceptance letters from schools I now couldn't afford to attend. Through the wall, I could hear Vanessa on the phone, excitedly discussing her upcoming orientation at Johns Hopkins. I didn't resent my sister. She had worked hard for her achievements, and her dream of becoming a cardiothoracic surgeon like our father was genuine. What I resented was the unquestioned assumption that her path was inherently more valuable than mine. Growing up in the Rivera household meant understanding your position in the family ecosystem early. My father, Dr. Miguel Rivera, was a respected heart surgeon whose immigrant parents had sacrificed everything to send him to medical school. My mother, Elena, had put her own nursing career on a slower track to support his rise in the medical community and raise their children, sacrifices she reminded us of regularly. From the beginning, Vanessa embraced the predetermined path. 3 years my senior, she played with toy stethoscopes while I dismantled electronic toys to understand their circuitry. She joined Future Doctors of America while I built computers from salvaged parts. She shadowed our father at the hospital while I taught myself coding languages from library books. Our parents celebrated every step of Vanessa's journey toward medicine. Her science fair victory on heart valve design warranted a family dinner at an expensive restaurant. My state-level programming competition win received polite nods and a, "That's nice, dear." When Vanessa was accepted to Johns Hopkins pre-med program, our parents threw an elaborate party with extended family and colleagues. My MIT acceptance, one of the most competitive programs in the world, was met with concerned discussions about financial practicality. The next morning, I found my mother alone in the kitchen, preparing her morning coffee. I decided to try one more time. "Mom, I've been looking at student loans and work-study options. If I combine those with my scholarship and maybe some help from you and Dad..." She cut me off with a gentle but firm hand on my arm. "Alex, your father and I have discussed this thoroughly. We simply can't sink ourselves financially when your sister's medical education is already so expensive. It wouldn't be fair to the family. The family. Always the family. Except when it came to my dreams. Then suddenly, I was separate. An investment deemed too risky. In that moment, I realized where I stood in my family's hierarchy of potential. Second place. The backup child. The practical one expected to settle for less. My name is Alex Rivera, and at 18, I discovered that my dreams were considered optional extras in my family's financial planning, line items that could be cut when the budget got tight. What I wanted was simple. The same opportunities my sister received. What stood in my way was equally simple. My parents' unshakable conviction that my sister's medical aspirations automatically outranked my technological ones. Their financial favoritism disguised as pragmatism. 2 days after receiving my MIT acceptance letter, I found a brochure for Arizona State University on my desk, placed there by my mother with sections on their computer science program highlighted and a sticky note that read, "Only 20 minutes from home." The not-so-subtle message was clear. Adjust your expectations downward. Accept less. Stay close. That evening, Vanessa arrived home for the weekend from her undergraduate program at UCLA, where she was completing her final semester before starting at Johns Hopkins. Our parents had planned a special dinner to celebrate her medical school acceptance, a stark contrast to the awkward silence that had followed my own academic achievement. "I heard about MIT," Vanessa said, finding me alone in my room as I researched student loan options on my cobbled-together PC. "Mom's pretty upset. You know they can't afford both of us at expensive schools." "They could if they wanted to," I replied, not looking up from my screen. "They've already committed to your full ride at Hopkins, tuition, housing, living expenses. They're not even willing to contribute a fraction of that to my education." Vanessa sighed, leaning against my doorframe. "Alex, be realistic. Medicine is a guaranteed career. Tech is volatile. Remember when Dad's friend Mark lost his job when that startup collapsed? He was unemployed for almost a year. That was one guy at one failed company. For every failure, there are a dozen successes. Look, don't make this harder on everyone. Mom and Dad are just looking out for your future. Not everyone needs an expensive private university education. State would be perfectly adequate for what you want to do. What I want to do. As if founding the next revolutionary tech company was equivalent to a casual hobby. Even my sister had absorbed our parents' narrative that I was reaching beyond my rightful place. During dinner, our father raised his glass in a toast. To Vanessa, who has made us incredibly proud. Johns Hopkins is lucky to have you. Following in the family tradition of medicine, there's no more noble pursuit. I pushed the food around on my plate, fighting to keep my expression neutral as everyone clinked glasses. Thank you, Vanessa beamed. I couldn't have done it without your support. Being able to focus exclusively on my studies during undergrad made all the difference. Our mother squeezed her hand. That's what parents are for, sweetheart, to help their children reach their full potential. I couldn't stop myself. Their full potential in medicine, you mean? The table fell silent. My father cleared his throat. Alex, this isn't the time. When is the time, Dad? When you're helping Vanessa move into her Johns Hopkins apartment that you're paying for? Or when I'm trying to figure out how to work 3 jobs while keeping a scholarship at MIT? We've already explained our position, my mother said, her voice tightening. The family simply doesn't have unlimited resources. Choices have to be made. You made the choice years ago, I replied quietly, when you decided one child's dreams were worth investing in and the others weren't. My father's face darkened. That's enough, Alex. This isn't about favoritism. It's about practical financial planning. Medicine is a secure profession with guaranteed returns. These computer companies come and go. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. Just fly-by-night operations, right? Nothing stable there. Don't be disrespectful, my mother interjected. We've offered a perfectly reasonable alternative. If MIT is so important to you, defer for a year. Work, save money, apply for more scholarships. While Vanessa gets to start, immediately with your full support. I pushed my chair back from the table. I appreciate the clarity, at least. I know exactly where I stand now. As I walked out, I heard my mother say to my father, he'll understand when he's older. Sometimes, being a parent means making difficult decisions. That night, I made a decision of my own. The summer after high school graduation passed in a blur of exhaustion. While my classmates enjoyed their last carefree months before college, I worked 3 jobs. Morning shifts at a local tech repair shop, afternoon hours doing freelance website development, and evening shifts at a 24-hour convenience store. I slept 4 hours a night, saved every penny, and researched student loans until my eyes burned. My parents initially thought I was saving for Arizona State. When I finally told them I was still planning on MIT, my father's disappointment was palpable. You're making this unnecessarily difficult, Alex. Sometimes the practical path is the wiser one. I'm not asking for your money anymore, I replied. Just your support. But even that seemed too much to ask. As the summer progressed, the household grew increasingly tense. My parents spoke enthusiastically about Vanessa's apartment hunting in Baltimore, helped her shop for professional clothing, and discussed how they would cover her living expenses so she could focus on her studies. Meanwhile, they looked at me with a mixture of frustration and resignation, as if my determination to attend MIT was an act of rebellion rather than ambition. I had calculated that with my scholarship, loans, savings from summer jobs, and a heavy work-study schedule, I could just barely afford my first year at MIT. Beyond that was uncertain, but I was determined to figure it out as I went. I would graduate with crushing debt, but I would graduate from MIT. By August, I had saved enough for my first semester's books and initial expenses, secured federal and private loans for tuition, and lined up 20 hours a week of work study in the university's IT department. It wouldn't be easy. I'd be working more hours than almost any of my classmates while taking a full course load in one of the country's most demanding programs. But I was going, with or without my parents' blessing. The night before, I was set to fly to Cambridge. My family held a modest dinner. The conversation revolved almost entirely around Vanessa's upcoming first semester at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Her challenging anatomy courses, her brilliant professors, her excitement about living in Baltimore. My imminent departure for MIT was an afterthought, mentioned only when I brought up logistics about my early morning flight. As dinner ended, my father disappeared into his study, returning with an envelope that he handed to me with a tight smile. Little something to help with expenses, he said. We wish it could be more. Inside was a check for $500, less than the cost of one textbook at MIT. I swallowed hard and tucked it away. Thank you, I managed. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen as I passed by on my way to finish packing. I still think we should have given him more, my mother said, her voice low. MIT is so expensive. We've been over this, Elena, my father replied, his voice tired but firm. We're already stretching our budget with Vanessa's medical school. Alex chose this path knowing we couldn't support it. Besides, these tech companies hire kids right out of high school these days. College isn't as necessary in his field. I suppose you're right, my mother sighed. And Vanessa's education has to come first. She's going to be a doctor after all. The familiar ache in my chest sharpened into something new, a clarity that cut through years of making excuses for their behavior. This wasn't about financial practicality. It had never been. My parents had simply decided long ago which child's dreams were worth investing in. The next morning, my father drove me to the airport in silence. As we approached the terminal, he finally spoke. You know we're proud of you, right? Getting into MIT is a great accomplishment. Just not one worth paying for, I replied quietly. He frowned. That's not fair, Alex. We've explained our financial situation. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. As I collected my bags from the trunk, he awkwardly patted my shoulder. Call when you land, he said. And remember, if it gets too difficult financially, there's always the option to transfer somewhere more affordable. In that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I would never transfer. I would never give up. And most importantly, I would never again expect my parents to believe in me. From now on, I would believe in myself enough for all of us. I walked into the terminal without looking back, carrying the weight of my belongings, my loans, and the knowledge that I was truly on my own. My first semester at MIT was a brutal education in sleep deprivation. I took a maximum course load, worked 20 hours a week at the IT department, and spent weekends doing freelance web development for small businesses. I lived on ramen and coffee, studied until my vision blurred, and still managed to make the dean's list. When winter break arrived, I couldn't afford the flight home to Phoenix, so I stayed in the dorms, one of the few students remaining on the nearly empty campus. I called my parents on Christmas Day. We miss you, Hee-ho, my mother said, her voice crackling over the poor connection. It's not the same without you. In the background, I could hear laughter and music, the annual Rivera family gathering, in full swing. I miss you too, I replied, not mentioning that I could have been there if they'd offered to help with the flight. Vanessa got straight A's this semester, my father chimed in proudly. Her anatomy professor says she has exceptional surgical potential. How are your computer classes going? Computer science courses, Dad, and they're going well. I made the dean's list? That's nice, he said, his tone suggesting this achievement was expected rather than exceptional. Say, we've been thinking, this separation is hard on all of us. There's still time to transfer to Arizona State for spring semester. You could live at home, save money. The suggestion wasn't new. Every phone call included some variation of this same pitch. Sacrifice your dreams for something more practical, more local, more aligned with their idea of success. I'm doing well here, Dad. This is where I need to be. the conversation shifted to other topics, but the underlying message remained clear. My parents still considered my MIT education a temporary rebellion rather than a legitimate path. They were waiting for me to give up and come home. But giving up wasn't in my plan. Because what my parents didn't know, what they had never bothered to understand, was that my impractical computer science passion wasn't just about coding. For fun. It was about building something revolutionary, something that would change not just my future, but potentially the world. When sophomore year began, I added another position to my already overwhelming workload: research assistant to Professor Eliza Chen, whose groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence and machine learning was revolutionizing the field. The position paid barely above minimum wage, but it offered something more valuable: mentorship from one of the brightest minds in computer science. By mid-October, my punishing schedule had taken its toll. I was running on fumes, subsisting on energy drinks and granola bars grabbed between classes and work shifts. During a late research session, I found myself nodding off while analyzing data patterns for Professor Chen's latest project. "Mr. Rivera," her voice startled me awake. "When was the last time you slept for more than 4 hours?" I blinked, trying to remember. "Last weekend, maybe? I'm fine, Professor." She frowned, setting down her tablet. "You're not fine. Your work is excellent, but you're going to burn out at this pace. No breakthrough is worth destroying your health." Something in her direct assessment broke through my carefully maintained facade. "I don't have a choice," I admitted. "My parents are only supporting my sister through medical school. I'm on my own for everything." Professor Chen studied me silently, her analytical mind visibly processing this information. "Come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m., she said finally. "I want to discuss your research contributions more thoroughly." The next day, Professor Chen offered me a position on her newest project, a study funded by a substantial grant from the National Science Foundation. The stipend was 3 times what I was making as a research assistant. "This isn't charity," she clarified, seeing my hesitation. "Your algorithm improved our last project's efficiency by 27%. You've earned this position on merit. I need someone who thinks like you do." For the first time since arriving at MIT, I could reduce my work hours slightly. I could occasionally buy fresh groceries instead of ramen. I could sleep 5 hours instead of 4. I could breathe. "Why are you helping me like this?" I asked Professor Chen one evening as we worked late on a particularly challenging problem. She looked up from her computer. "Because 20 years ago I was you, Alex. My parents wanted me to become a doctor. When I chose computer science instead, they cut me off financially." She smiled slightly. "And because someone saw my potential and did the same for me. This is how innovation happens. We recognize talent and nurture it, even when others don't see its value." Under Professor Chen's guidance, I began developing an algorithm to help businesses optimize their supply chains using predictive AI. What started as a small project for her research soon evolved into something more ambitious, a system that could analyze countless variables and predict bottlenecks or inefficiencies before they occurred. "This has commercial potential," Professor Chen observed one day, reviewing my latest iteration. "Have you considered developing this beyond our research needs?" The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Developing my algorithm into a commercial product would require time, resources, and expertise I didn't have. But the seed had been planted. When I called my parents with the news about my research position, their response was lukewarm. "That's nice, dear. But is their job security and research?" my mother asked. "Vanessa just got accepted for a prestigious hospital rotation. It's practically guaranteeing her a choice residency position." The comparison was automatic, reflexive. My achievement immediately measured against my sister's and found wanting. But something had changed in me. The validation from Professor Chen, a leading mind in the field, had begun to counteract years of my parents' dismissal. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. exhaustion etched in the dark, circles under my eyes. Despite my slightly lighter workload, the voice in my head that had always whispered, "Prove them wrong," was getting harder to hear beneath the accumulated weight of their constant dismissal. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was following a foolish dream destined for disappointment, while Vanessa walked the sure path to success. The thought terrified me more than any all-nighter ever could. But then I remembered Professor Chen's words. Your mind approaches problems differently. Where others see obstacles, you see patterns and possibilities. She believed in me, not because we were family, but because she genuinely saw value in how my brain worked. Junior year brought an unexpected revelation. For an advanced AI course, we were assigned a project analyzing efficiency in various industries. I chose healthcare operations, thinking it might give me something to discuss with my sister and parents, a bridge between our worlds. As I researched hospital operations, I discovered something surprising. The inefficiencies in medical systems, from scheduling to supply management to patient flow, were costing hospitals millions and impacting patient care. More importantly, I realized my algorithm could be adapted to address these problems. Stayed up 3 nights straight refining my project, fueled by a new sense of purpose. When I presented it to the class, Professor Chen was in the audience. Her eyes widened as she watched me demonstrate how my system could potentially reduce emergency room wait times by 30% while optimizing staff scheduling and resource allocation. "This is brilliant, Alex," she said afterward. "You found a perfect application for your work, one with immediate real-world impact. What my parents had never understood, what I was only now fully realizing myself, was that my impractical computer science passion had a direct application to my sister's practical medical world. My background as the son of a surgeon and a nurse had given me insights into healthcare operations that most tech students lacked, while my technical training provided solutions that most medical professionals couldn't envision. My outsider status in both worlds had become my greatest advantage. I refined my healthcare optimization system throughout junior year, combining my algorithm with insights gleaned from conversations with medical students and hospital administrators who were intrigued by my approach. Professor Chen introduced me to contacts at Boston's leading hospitals, where I was allowed to observe operations and gather data to test my theories. During spring break, I finally had enough money saved to fly home to Phoenix. I was excited to share my healthcare AI project with my family, hoping they might finally see value in my work now that it connected to their medical world. The dynamic at home remained unchanged. Dinner conversations revolved around Vanessa's medical school experiences, her challenging rotations, her brilliant mentors. When I tried to explain my healthcare efficiency project, my father nodded politely before changing the subject back to Vanessa's upcoming cardiology rotation. "It's just that my system could actually help hospitals like yours, Dad." I tried again. "It could reduce wait times and optimize resource allocation." "That sounds interesting," he said without much enthusiasm. "But real healthcare improvements come from medical advances, not computer programs." Speaking of which, Vanessa's research paper on coronary interventions was accepted for publication. My mother beamed. "We're going to frame it when it's published." I bit back my disappointment. My own research paper on healthcare AI applications had been accepted to a prestigious computer science conference, but I didn't bother mentioning it. The pattern was too familiar, too entrenched to break through. That night, Vanessa found me sitting alone on the back porch. "You seemed quiet at dinner," she observed, sitting beside me. "Just tired from the semester," I replied. "Mom showed me your grades. You're doing really well at MIT." "Thanks," she hesitated. "Look, I know it's been tough with Mom and Dad. They mean well, but they can be narrow-minded about what success looks like." I looked at her, surprised by this acknowledgement. "For what it's worth," she continued, I think what you're doing is impressive. This healthcare algorithm you mentioned, it actually sounds really useful. The hospital where I'm doing my rotation has terrible inefficiencies. The administrators are always talking about optimization but don't seem to know how to implement it. For the first time, I felt a genuine connection with my sister, not as competitors in our parents' eyes, but as professionals who could appreciate each other's fields. Would you want to see how it works? I asked cautiously. I have the simulation on my laptop. Actually, I would. For the next hour, I walked Vanessa through my system, showing how it could predict patient loads, optimize staffing, and improve resource allocation. To my surprise, she asked insightful questions and even suggested medical variables I hadn't considered. This could actually make a huge difference, she said when I finished, especially in emergency departments. You know what the biggest complaint from doctors is? Not the medical challenges. It's the operational inefficiencies that prevent them from doing their best work. Her words stayed with me long after I returned to MIT. I had been approaching my algorithm as a technical solution, but the real value was in its human impact, helping doctors and nurses deliver better care by removing systemic obstacles. This realization sparked a new direction for my work. I wasn't just building a more efficient system. I was creating a tool that could transform healthcare delivery. What had begun as an academic exercise was evolving into something with profound real-world implications. By the end of junior year, my healthcare optimization system had advanced enough that Professor Chen suggested I consider presenting it at an upcoming healthcare technology conference in San Francisco. It's primarily attended by hospital administrators and healthcare investors, she explained. Your system is exactly what they're looking for. Technology that delivers measurable improvements to both operations and patient care. Do you really think it's ready? I asked, nervously reviewing my latest simulation results. More than ready, she assured me. Alex, what you've created here isn't just a clever algorithm. It's a potential game changer for healthcare operations. You've combined technical innovation with genuine understanding of the medical environment. That's remarkably rare. With Professor Chen's encouragement, I submitted my proposal to the conference and was accepted for a presentation slot. As I prepared my materials, I couldn't help wondering what my parents would think if they could see me now, applying my impractical computer science skills to transform the very medical world they revered. The Healthcare Innovation Summit in San Francisco marked my first professional conference presentation. As I stood backstage waiting for my turn, I scrolled through text messages from Vanessa wishing me luck, followed by a brief, "Good luck with your talk" from my parents, the digital equivalent of a perfunctory nod. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage facing an audience of healthcare executives, hospital administrators, and investors, people who likely shared my parents' view that medicine was the noble profession and technology merely a supporting tool. I had 15 minutes to change their perspective. Healthcare doesn't have a knowledge problem, I began, setting aside my prepared opening. It has a system problem. The brilliant doctors and dedicated nurses in our hospitals, like my father and mother, are working within operational frameworks designed decades ago that fail to adapt to modern challenges. I launched into my presentation, demonstrating how my AI-driven system, which I'd named MetaFlow, could predict patient surges 24 hours in advance with 87% accuracy, optimize staff scheduling to match actual need rather than rigid shifts, and allocate resources dynamically to prevent bottlenecks before they occurred. In simulations using real data from 3 Boston hospitals, I concluded, MediFlow reduced emergency wait times by an average of 31%, decreased unnecessary overnight stays by 22%, and improved overall resource utilization by 27%, all without adding staff or equipment. This isn't about replacing medical expertise with technology. It's about removing the operational barriers that prevent medical professionals from doing what they do best, caring for patients. The response was immediate and overwhelming. As soon as I finished, I was surrounded by hospital administrators, asking technical questions, technology officers wanting implementation details, and several investors inquiring about commercialization plans. Among them was Catherine Lawson, CEO of Health Vector, a healthcare technology investment firm. "Your approach is refreshing," she said after introducing herself. "Most tech people try to solve healthcare problems without understanding healthcare culture. You clearly grasp both worlds." "I grew up in a medical family," I explained. "My father's a cardiac surgeon, my mother's a nurse, and my sister's in medical school." She nodded. "That explains it. Listen, do you have time for coffee tomorrow? I'd like to discuss your system in more detail." The next morning over coffee, Catherine cut straight to the point. "Your system has enormous potential, but you need resources to develop it properly. Health Vector could provide those resources, along with industry connections and regulatory guidance." "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked cautiously. "Initial funding to develop MediFlow into a commercial product, with ongoing investment tied to development milestones. We'd help you establish a company, build a team, and navigate the healthcare market." My pulse quickened. "And in return?" "An equity stake in the company. You'd remain the majority shareholder and technical lead. We're investors, not operators. We want you driving this forward." By the time I returned to MIT, I had a term sheet for $1.2 million in seed funding to transform MediFlow from a research project into a commercial product. Professor Chen helped me assemble an advisory board of technical and medical experts, while Catherine introduced me to healthcare industry veterans who could guide the business development. MediFlow Technologies was officially founded during the first semester of my senior year at MIT. I established the company headquarters in a small office space in Cambridge, hired 2 fellow computer science students as developers, and brought on a recent MBA graduate to handle business operations. For the rest of my senior year, I divided my time between completing my degree and building my company. The pace was grueling but exhilarating. For the first time, my work had tangible, real-world impact rather than just academic value. We secured our first pilot implementation at Massachusetts General Hospital 3 months after founding. Their emergency department agreed to run MediFlow in parallel with their existing systems for 3 months to compare results. The initial outcomes exceeded even my optimistic projections: a 29% reduction in wait times, 18% improvement in resource utilization, and, most importantly, significantly higher satisfaction scores from both patients and medical staff. "The physicians love it," the ED director told me during our review meeting. "For the first time, they feel like the system is anticipating their needs rather than creating obstacles. One of our veteran doctors said it's like having an invisible assistant who's always one step ahead." Word spread quickly through the healthcare community. By graduation, we had signed agreements with 5 major hospitals for paid pilots, and Health Vector had committed an additional $3 million in funding based on our early success. I called my parents the night before graduation to confirm their arrival time in Boston. I was excited to show them not just my MIT diploma, but the company I had built, concrete proof that my impractical path had led to something substantial. "About that," my father said hesitantly, "your mother and I won't be able to make it to the ceremony. There's been a scheduling conflict with Vanessa's white coat ceremony at Johns Hopkins. As parents, we really need to be there for that milestone." The familiar sting of being the second priority child washed over me. "Her white coat ceremony is more important than my MIT graduation?" "It's not about importance," my mother interjected in the background. "It's just timing. These events, unfortunately, conflict, and Vanessa's ceremony is a crucial tradition in medical education." I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. "We're very proud of you," my father added awkwardly. "Graduating from MIT is a tremendous achievement. And this little software project you've started sounds promising too." Little software project? My company that had just secured over $4 million in funding and was already transforming hospital operations. "We'll make it up to you," my mother promised. Maybe we can visit Boston later in the summer? Don't worry about it, I replied, my voice neutral. I understand priorities. After hanging up, I sat in my small apartment surrounded by boxes packed for my move to Mediflow's new, larger office space. The disappointment was familiar, but it no longer devastated me. My parents' approval had ceased to be the currency by which I measured my worth. I graduated from MIT with honors, with Professor Chen and the Mediflow team cheering from the audience. Catherine from Health Vector took me to dinner afterward, raising a toast to the newest MIT alum and the most promising young CEO in healthcare technology. The months following graduation were a whirlwind of growth for Mediflow. Our successful pilot programs led to full implementations at 12 major hospitals across the country. We expanded the team to 15 people, moved to a larger office in Cambridge's tech corridor, and began developing additional modules for operating room scheduling and resource management. One evening, as I was reviewing our latest implementation, I received an unexpected call from Vanessa. "Alex, I need to talk to you about Mediflow," she said without preamble. "Is this system of yours really that good?" "The results speak for themselves," I replied. "Why do you ask?" "Because Hopkins is considering implementing it in our emergency department. Your system came up in a staff meeting today, and some of the administrators were raving about the results from Mass General and Mayo Clinic." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. "What do you think, as a doctor in training? Would it help your work?" She paused. "Honestly? If it does what they're claiming, it would be revolutionary. Do you know the biggest complaint I hear from attending physicians? It's not about difficult cases or long hours. It's about wasted time and resources due to poor system coordination. That's exactly what Mediflow addresses." "I know," she admitted. "And I feel terrible that I didn't take your work more seriously. Before, none of us did." Her words weren't quite an apology, but they were the closest acknowledgement I'd received from my family that my path had value. "Have you told Mom and Dad that Hopkins is considering my system?" I asked. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first," she hesitated. "They still don't really understand what you've built, Alex. They think you've created some kind of scheduling app, not a system that's transforming hospital operations." "Their perception doesn't change the reality," I replied. 6 months after graduation, Mediflow had grown to 25 employees with implementations in 27 hospitals nationwide. Our results were consistent across different types of facilities: significant reductions in wait times, improved resource utilization, and higher satisfaction from both patients and medical staff. The healthcare technology press began taking notice. Digital Health Today named me one of their 30 under 30 innovators in healthcare technology. Modern Healthcare published a feature on how Mediflow was bridging the gap between medical expertise and operational efficiency. Harvard Business Review included us in a case study on disruptive innovations in healthcare. Then came the call that would transform everything. Dr. William Kearns, the newly appointed Chief Innovation Officer at the Mayo Clinic, requested a meeting to discuss a potential enterprise-wide implementation of Mediflow across their entire hospital network. "We've been closely monitoring your results at our Rochester facility," he explained during our initial video call. "The improvements are too significant to ignore. We want to explore rolling this out across all our locations and potentially collaborating on future development." The Mayo Clinic was healthcare royalty, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the world. Their adoption would establish Mediflow as the gold standard in healthcare operations management. 2 weeks later, I flew to Rochester, Minnesota to present to their executive leadership team. As I walked into their boardroom, I was struck by a sudden realization. Many of these medical leaders resembled my father, established, respected professionals who had built their careers within traditional healthcare structures. Yet here they were, looking to a 24-year-old software developer to solve problems they couldn't address within their existing frameworks. My presentation went beyond technical specifications to focus on the human impact of Metaflow. Doctors who could spend more time with patients instead of battling inefficient systems. Nurses whose workloads were distributed more evenly throughout their shifts. Patients who received faster, more coordinated care. "What you've created here," Dr. Kearns said afterward, "is a bridge between the technological and medical worlds. That's extraordinarily rare and valuable." The Mayo Clinic signed a $12 million contract for enterprise-wide implementation, with additional provisions for collaborative development of new modules specific to their needs. The deal made headline news in both healthcare and technology publications. That evening, after the contracts were signed and celebrations concluded, I received a text from Vanessa. "Just saw the Mayo Clinic announcement. This is huge, Alex. Really huge. I'm so proud of you." It was the first time anyone in my family had expressed genuine pride in my work. Later that night, my phone rang, my parents calling together. "We saw the news about Mayo Clinic," my father said, his voice different somehow. That's extraordinary, son." "The Mayo Clinic," my mother emphasized. "Your father has colleagues who've tried for years to get affiliations there. And they're implementing your system across their entire network?" "Yes," I replied simply. "All their hospitals and clinics." "We may have underestimated the impact of your work," my father admitted. "We didn't fully understand what you were building." For the first time in our conversation, they asked detailed questions about Metaflow, how it worked, why hospitals valued it, what future developments I planned. They listened to my answers with genuine interest rather than polite tolerance. As our call ended, my father cleared his throat. "We're very proud of what you've accomplished, Alex. You've proven us wrong about many things." Those words, acknowledgement of their misjudgment, should have felt like vindication, yet they stirred little emotion in me. I had moved beyond needing their approval, beyond measuring my worth through their assessment of my choices. The following quarter, HealthVector facilitated a Series A funding round that valued Metaflow Technologies at $40 million. The investment would allow us to expand nationwide, develop new system modules, and build a sales and implementation team to support rapid growth. As news of the funding round broke in the business press, I received an unexpected email from my father. "Your mother and I would like to visit you in Boston. We want to see your company and better understand what you've built. We've realized we've been missing something important." 3 years after graduating from MIT, I stood in the sleek headquarters of Metaflow Technologies in downtown Boston, reviewing the latest implementation metrics on our wall of digital displays. What had begun as an algorithm in Professor Chen's research lab had evolved into a company transforming healthcare operations across the country. Our team had grown to 75 employees spread across development, implementation, customer success, and business operations. Metaflow's system was now running in over 100 hospitals nationwide, with international expansions beginning in Canada and the UK. The latest version of our platform had expanded beyond emergency departments to encompass entire hospital operations, from operating room scheduling to bed management to supply chain optimization. Last month's Series B funding round had valued the company at $40 million, a figure that still seemed surreal to me. I had gone from working 3 jobs to afford MIT textbooks to leading a company that was changing healthcare delivery. The journey had been grueling but exhilarating, filled with challenges that forced me to grow beyond the role of technical innovator into a business leader. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Alex, your parents are here to see you." I froze momentarily. My parents had finally visited Boston 6 months ago, touring our previous office with awkward enthusiasm. Their attempts to understand my work had been genuine, but limited by their traditional medical perspective. We had settled into a new, somewhat improved relationship. They no longer suggested I transfer to Arizona State, and I no longer expected them to fully grasp or validate my choices. But they hadn't mentioned another visit. And they certainly hadn't mentioned coming to the office. "Send them up, please," I replied, straightening my desk reflexively. They entered my corner office tentatively, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline, the sleek modern furniture, and the awards lining the walls. My mother embraced me while my father stood awkwardly, clutching a folded newspaper. "We didn't tell you we were coming because we weren't sure about your schedule," my mother explained. "But we have a medical conference in Boston this weekend, so we thought we'd surprise you." "We saw the article in the Wall Street Journal," my father added, unfolding the business section with Mediflow featured prominently. $40 million valuation. That's extraordinary, Alex. Why didn't you tell us about the funding round?" "It's been a busy time," I replied, gesturing for them to sit. The truth was more complicated. I had stopped sharing major milestones with them years ago, tired of having my achievements immediately compared to Vanessa's or met with tepid enthusiasm. "Well, we're incredibly proud," my mother gushed, her eyes cataloging every detail of my success. "We always knew you had it in you." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We may have been short-sighted about your potential in this field, but we've always wanted what's best for you." "What's best for me?" I repeated. "Like when you refused to contribute to my MIT education while fully funding Vanessa's medical school. Or when you missed my graduation for her white coat ceremony?" "Alex," my mother began. "It's fine," I interrupted. "I made it work without your support, and I've built something meaningful in the process." An awkward silence filled the office. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Actually, we were hoping to discuss something with you," he said, leaning forward. "You see, we've been thinking about our retirement planning, and with investment opportunities like this so rare—" He hesitated. "Well, we wondered if there might be room for some family investment in Mediflow." There it was, the real reason for their unexpected visit. The irony was almost too perfect. "You want to invest in Mediflow now?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Family supporting family," my mother said warmly. "We've been following your success, and it seems like the perfect opportunity to show our belief in what you're building. Now that it's valued at $40 million, I added. My father had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "We've always believed in you, Alex. Perhaps not in the way you needed, but you believed in me so much that you gave me $500 for MIT while spending hundreds of thousands on Vanessa's education?" "That was different," my mother protested. "Medicine is a tried and true path. Technology was uncertain. It was a calculated risk," my father added. "We invested in what we understood." I studied their faces, earnest, hopeful, completely unaware of the profound irony in their request. The parents who had deemed my dreams too risky to support now wanted to profit from the success I had achieved despite their lack of faith. "Let me show you something," I said, standing up. I led them out of my office to a long hallway where a series of framed displays chronicled Mediflow's history. The first frame contained my MIT acceptance letter alongside a coffee-stained work schedule from the convenience store where I'd pulled overnight shifts to pay for books. "This is where it started," I explained, watching their expressions shift from curiosity to discomfort. 3 jobs, 4 hours of sleep a night, and instant noodles for every meal because I couldn't afford the meal plan. We moved down the hall to displays showing early algorithm sketches, our first hospital contract, rejection letters from early investors, and a photo of our original team in the tiny Cambridge office. Each step was a fight, I continued. Every milestone required sacrifice and supporters who actually believed in the vision. The final display held the Series B funding documents and a photograph of our current leadership team. Brilliant. Innovators who had joined Mediflow when it was still a risky bet. Our investment policy is very specific, I said, stopping before this last frame. We only bring in partners who demonstrated faith in us during the difficult early stages. People who saw potential when others didn't. My father's face reddened. We're family, Alex. Surely that counts for something. It does, I agreed. That's why I established this. I showed them a brochure for the Mediflow Foundation, which I had launched 6 months earlier. Every year, we fund 20 scholarships for promising students in STEM fields who lack family financial support. Full rides, tuition, housing, living expenses. We sponsor students who remind me of myself at 18, full of potential, but told their dreams aren't practical investments. My parents stood silent, finally understanding. We don't need family investors, I said gently. But those students do need someone to believe in them. That's the lesson I learned from you, though perhaps not the one you intended to teach. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Alex, we never meant to. I know, I interrupted. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. But choices have consequences, and some can't be undone. We walked back to my office in silence. As they prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said quietly. I was wrong about computer science being an impractical path. What you've built here is remarkable. Not just financially successful, but genuinely improving healthcare. As a doctor, I see the value in that more clearly than I did before. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. That actually means something to me. After they left, I returned to the window overlooking Boston, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The anger and hurt that had once fueled my determination had gradually transformed into something more sustainable, pride in what I'd built, and confidence in my own judgment. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected package from Phoenix. Inside was a framed document, my original MIT acceptance letter, which my parents had apparently kept all these years despite their objections to my attending. With it was a note from my father. Alex, your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking since our visit. The Mediflow Foundation scholarships you've established show a generosity of spirit that humbles us. While we cannot undo our past decisions, we want to honor your path in whatever way we can. We've made a donation to your foundation in your name, enough to fund 2 additional scholarships for students whose families don't support their STEM dreams. It's a small step toward acknowledging that we should have seen the potential in your vision earlier. You've built something remarkable, not just in spite of our limitations, but perhaps because of them. The resilience and determination you developed have clearly served you well. With respect and pride. Dad, I sat with the letter for a long time, feeling neither triumph nor vindication, but something more complex, a sense of completion. My parents' belated recognition didn't change the past, but it did suggest the possibility of a different future relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than frustrated expectations. The following month, I was invited to give a keynote address at the National Healthcare Innovation Conference. As I prepared my remarks, I reflected on the winding path that had led me here, from the rejected MIT student to the founder of a company reshaping healthcare operations. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of healthcare leaders, I began. 6 years ago, I was told that my dreams weren't practical enough to invest in. That computer science was just a hobby, not a legitimate career path like medicine. Today, the system I created is helping doctors and nurses in over 100 hospitals deliver better care to their patients. The journey between those 2 points wasn't just about proving doubters wrong, it was about proving myself right. In the front row sat Professor Chen, now serving on Mediflow's advisory board, alongside Catherine from Health Vector, who had given us our first investment. Behind them was Vanessa, who had flown in specifically for my talk and had become one of Metaflow's strongest advocates within the medical community. The most valuable lesson I've learned is that innovation often comes from those who approach problems from unexpected angles, I continued. Sometimes the greatest contributions to a field come from outsiders, people who weren't fully embraced by the established system, but who saw possibilities others missed precisely because of their different perspective. After the talk, Vanessa approached with a colleague she introduced as the chief of emergency medicine at Johns Hopkins. "Your brother's system has transformed our department," he told her. "Wait times down 36%, staff satisfaction up 42%. I've been practicing emergency medicine for 25 years, and I've never seen an operational improvement with this kind of impact." Vanessa smiled. "I always knew he was the smart one in the family." Later, as we had dinner together, she became more serious. "You know, Mom and Dad really are proud of you now. They talk about you to everyone, the brilliant son who's revolutionizing healthcare operations." I shrugged. Better late than never, I suppose. "They made mistakes," she acknowledged. "Big ones. They were limited by their own experiences and biases. But they're trying to understand now." "I know," I replied. "And I'm not angry anymore. I've realized something important. Their approval or disapproval doesn't define my worth. Never did." "For what it's worth," Vanessa said. "I'm sorry too. I benefited from their favoritism without questioning it. I should have advocated for you more." "We were both just following the scripts we were given," I told her. "You did exactly what was expected of you. I did exactly what wasn't expected of me." And somehow we both ended up where we needed to be. As I walked back to the Metaflow office that evening, I reflected on the unexpected journey from that painful moment in our family kitchen, my MIT acceptance letter trembling in my hands, to now. The path had been harder than necessary, marked by obstacles that could have been avoided with the right support. Yet those very challenges had forced me to develop strengths I might otherwise never have discovered. Resilience, self-reliance, and the ability to see opportunities where others saw only problems. The struggle hadn't just led to success, it had shaped who I had become. In my office, I looked at the growing list of Metaflow Foundation scholarship recipients, bright young minds pursuing dreams in AI, biotechnology, renewable energy, and dozens of other fields their families couldn't or wouldn't support, each of them facing their own version of the obstacles I had encountered. They were the real legacy of my journey, not the $40 million valuation, not the industry awards, not even the improved hospital operations. Their potential, their future, innovations, their chance to pursue their own visions without the burden of proving their worth to those who should have believed in them from the start. That night, I added a second donation to match my parents' contribution to the scholarship fund, not out of competition, but in recognition that some lessons, once learned, deserve to be passed forward. 5 years after our Series B funding round, I stood on the balcony of Metaflow's expanded headquarters, now occupying 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Boston's Seaport District. The company had grown beyond my wildest expectations. Over 300 employees, implementations in more than 500 hospitals across 12 countries, and a valuation that had recently crossed $220 million. More important than the financial metrics were the human impacts, an estimated 2.7 million patients experiencing shorter wait times annually, tens of thousands of medical professionals working in more efficient environments, and countless lives improved through better resource allocation and care coordination. Professor Chen, now serving as our chief science advisor while continuing her research at MIT, joined me at the railing. "Quite a view," she commented, gazing out at Boston Harbor. "Both literally and metaphorically." "It's come a long way from that algorithm we developed in your lab," I agreed. "I knew it would," she said simply, though perhaps not quite this dramatically. Inside, preparations were underway for an event I'd never imagined hosting. a gala celebrating the 5th anniversary of the Mediflow Foundation. What had begun with 20 scholarships had expanded to support over 100 students annually, across STEM disciplines, with a particular focus on those pursuing innovations at the intersection of technology and healthcare. The first class of Foundation scholars graduates this spring, I told Professor Chen. Several have already accepted positions here at Mediflow. Others are launching startups of their own. The true measure of impact, she replied with a smile. Creating a ripple effect that extends beyond your direct influence. My assistant appeared at the doorway. Alex, your parents and sister have arrived. Over the years, my relationship with my family had evolved into something I wouldn't have recognized during my MIT days. The wounds hadn't disappeared entirely, but they had healed into scars that ached only occasionally, reminders of a past that had shaped me without defining me. My parents had become enthusiastic supporters of the Mediflow Foundation, serving on its advisory board and helping identify promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds. My father, now semi-retired from his surgical practice, had even begun teaching a course on healthcare innovation at Arizona State's engineering school. A remarkable evolution for someone who had once dismissed computer science as just a hobby. I greeted them in the lobby where they were admiring the wall of impact metrics, digital displays showing real-time data from hospitals using our system. 39 minutes, my father read from one display. Average reduction in emergency department wait times across all implementations. That's extraordinary, Alex. All these years as a surgeon, he continued, shaking his head, I focused on helping one patient at a time. Your system is improving care for millions simultaneously. Different approaches, same goal, I replied. Better healthcare outcomes. My mother squeezed my arm. We're so proud of what you've built. Not just the company, but the foundation. Those scholarships are changing lives. Speaking of which, Vanessa interjected, I have news about Sophia Martinez, the scholarship recipient I'm mentoring. She just won the National Biomedical Engineering Competition with her neural interface design. Vanessa had become an unexpected ally in the Foundation's work, volunteering as a mentor for scholars interested in medical applications of technology. Her perspective as a practicing neurosurgeon provided valuable insights for students developing healthcare innovations. As we toured the offices, showing my family the latest developments in our system, I reflected on how profoundly things had changed. The parents who had once refused to support my education now traveled across the country to celebrate the foundation that provided that same support to others. The sister who had inadvertently benefited from their favoritism now worked to ensure other talented students weren't overlooked. That evening, the headquarters transformed for the Foundation Gala. Current and former scholarship recipients mingled with hospital administrators, technology leaders, and educational partners, all united by a commitment to nurturing talent regardless of background or family resources. As I prepared to address the gathering, I found myself thinking about the long, winding path that had led to this moment, the rejection that had fueled determination, the struggle that had forced innovation, the success that had enabled generosity. Welcome, everyone, I began, surveying the crowd. 5 years ago, the Mediflow Foundation awarded its first 20 scholarships to students in STEM fields who lacked family financial support. Today, we celebrate not just the growth of that program to over 100 annual scholarships, but the remarkable achievements of those students. I gestured to the displays around the room, showcasing projects and innovations developed by Foundation scholars. Each of these students has a story similar to my own. Tremendous potential met with limited resources. The difference is that they didn't have to work 3 jobs or take on crushing debt to pursue their education. They didn't have to choose between textbooks and food. They could focus on learning, on creating, on innovating, which is exactly what they've done. From the audience, I caught my father's eye. He nodded slightly, an acknowledgement of both, my journey and his part in it. What these scholars have taught us is that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. By bridging that gap, we don't just change individual lives, we accelerate innovation that benefits everyone. The medical devices, sustainable energy solutions, and technological breakthroughs displayed around this room are testament to what becomes possible when we invest in potential rather than only in certainty. After the formal program, a young woman approached me, Maria Gonzalez, one of our first scholarship recipients, now completing her PhD in biomedical engineering at Stanford. "I wanted to thank you personally," she said, extending her hand. "Not just for the financial support, but for creating a model of what's possible. When my parents told me they couldn't help with college because my brother's law school was their priority, I thought my dreams were over. The foundation didn't just pay my tuition, it showed me that someone believed my path was valuable." Her words struck a chord deep within me. The echo of my own experience transformed into something positive for another person. "What's next? For you after Stanford?" I asked. "I've designed an adaptive prosthetic control system using machine learning," she replied, her eyes lighting up. "It allows more intuitive control for users and adapts to their movement patterns over time. I'm planning to launch a startup to develop it commercially. Would you be interested in discussing potential incubation support from Metaflow Ventures?" I offered, referring to our newly established innovation fund. "Your work aligns perfectly with our mission of using technology to improve healthcare outcomes." Her expression of shock and gratitude mirrored what I had felt years ago when Professor Chen had first recognized my potential. Later that evening, I found my parents and Vanessa in a quiet corner, deep in conversation with Professor Chen and several Foundation scholars. My father was animatedly discussing the integration of AI diagnostics with traditional medical practice, a topic he would have dismissed as fantasy just a few years earlier. "There you are," my mother said, spotting me. "We were just hearing about Maya's research on predictive analytics for preventative healthcare. It's fascinating." Maya, a brilliant data scientist and second-year Foundation scholar, beamed. "Dr. Rivera has offered to connect me with colleagues at Mayo Clinic who might be interested in collaborating on clinical trials." My father shrugged modestly. "It's the least I can do. Her work could transform how we approach preventative care." The sight of my father, once so dismissive of technology's role in healthcare, now actively supporting a young innovator's research reflected a transformation I could never have anticipated. As the evening wound down, my parents pulled me aside for a private moment. "We've been thinking," my father began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "We'd like to establish an endowment for the Foundation, specifically for students pursuing innovations at the intersection of medicine and technology. We've set aside a significant portion of our retirement savings," my mother added. "We want to create something permanent, the Rivera Family Endowment for Healthcare Innovation." I studied their faces, seeing genuine commitment rather than compensatory guilt. "That's incredibly generous," I said carefully. "But are you sure? Your retirement is secure," my father interjected. "We've done well, Alex, and this matters more than another vacation home or luxury car. This is about creating the support we should have provided years ago, not just for you, but for all the students like you. We can't change the past," my mother said softly, "but we can help shape the future." In that moment, I realized we had all completed a journey, not just me, but my parents as well. They had evolved from people who couldn't see beyond traditional paths to success into champions of innovation and unconventional thinking. The transformation wasn't about money or success, it was about recognizing value in diverse forms of contribution. The following morning, I had breakfast with Vanessa before she flew back to Baltimore. We sat at a waterfront cafe, watching boats navigate the harbor as we reflected on the previous evening. "Remember when we were kids," she said, stirring her coffee, "and Mom and Dad would introduce me as the future doctor and you as our computer whiz? As if medicine was a profession and technology was a hobby, I laughed. Hard to forget. It shaped most of my adolescence. I never questioned it, she admitted. The assumption that my path was somehow more valuable or legitimate than yours. I accepted their framework without thinking. We all did, in different ways. She looked up from her coffee. You know what I've realized, watching you build Mediflow and the foundation? Success isn't linear. It doesn't follow predetermined paths. Sometimes the most impactful contributions come from the directions nobody expected. That's what we try. To teach the foundation scholars, I agreed. Conventional wisdom is often just that, conventional. Real breakthroughs happen at the edges, where different perspectives meet. Your perspective changed healthcare operations, she observed. Maybe more significantly than my work as a physician ever will. It's not a competition, I said, surprising myself with how genuinely I meant it. We're approaching the same goal from different angles. Better healthcare doesn't care whether it comes from a surgeon or a software engineer. After Vanessa departed, for the airport, I walked along the harbor toward the Mediflow offices, reflecting on how far we had all come from that moment in our Phoenix kitchen when my parents had declared my MIT dreams impractical. The company I had built had not only achieved financial success, but had fundamentally changed how hundreds of hospitals delivered care. The foundation had created opportunities for students who might otherwise have abandoned their dreams. And perhaps most surprisingly, my family had evolved beyond their limited vision of success to embrace innovation in all its forms. As I reached the office, I received a notification on my phone. Maria Gonzalez, the scholarship recipient I had spoken with at the gala, had sent a detailed proposal for her adaptive prosthetic startup. Attached was a note. The Mediflow Foundation gave me the chance to pursue my education when my family couldn't support it. Now I want to build something that helps others the way you've helped me. Sometimes the most important innovations come from those who had to find unconventional paths forward. Her words captured exactly what I had aimed to create, not just a scholarship program, but a community of innovators who understood that obstacles could become advantages, that rejection could fuel determination, and that success was most meaningful when it extended beyond personal vindication to create opportunities for others. The original wound of my parents' refusal to support my education, once so painful it had defined my sense of self-worth, had transformed into something I could never have anticipated. A mission that now helped hundreds of students avoid that same pain while pursuing their unique visions. As I looked toward the future, both of Mediflow and the Foundation, I realized that the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving critics wrong. It's creating systems that ensure others don't face the same limitations. It's transforming personal disappointment into structural opportunity. In the end, my parents had taught me an invaluable lesson, though not the one they had intended. Sometimes the greatest innovations come from those who were told their dreams weren't practical enough to support, because they're the ones who learn to build new paths where traditional ones don't exist. 7 years after founding Mediflow, I found myself standing in a rural hospital in Nairobi, Kenya, watching as our system came online for the first time. The doctors and nurses gathered around the monitors, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism as the interface displayed real-time data about patient flow, resource allocation, and predicted admission patterns. This is truly remarkable, Dr. Amara Okafor, the hospital's medical director, said as she navigated through the system. In a resource-constrained environment like ours, optimizing what we have isn't just about efficiency. It's about saving lives. This implementation represented a significant new direction for Mediflow, bringing our technology to developing regions where healthcare systems operated under extreme resource limitations. Through the Mediflow Global Access Initiative, we had adapted our system to function with intermittent power, limited connectivity, and widely varying infrastructure, We provided the technology at a fraction of our standard cost, subsidized by profits from our operations in wealthier countries. The initiative had begun almost accidentally, when a foundation scholar from Nigeria had approached me about adapting Mediflow for use in his home country. Ebuka Nwankwo, a brilliant systems engineer, had recognized that while our core technology was designed for sophisticated hospital networks, its underlying principles could transform healthcare delivery anywhere. The constraints are different, but the fundamental challenge is the same, he had explained, making the most of limited resources to provide the best possible care. Ebuka now led our global health division, overseeing implementations across Africa, parts of Asia, and Latin America. He had assembled a team of engineers and healthcare specialists who understood both the technological and cultural aspects of deploying such systems in diverse environments. As we walked through the Nairobi hospital, I marveled at how far Mediflow had come from its origins as a student project in Professor Chen's lab. What had begun as an algorithm to optimize emergency department operations had evolved into a comprehensive healthcare management platform with applications I had never initially imagined. Back in my hotel room that evening, I video called into Mediflow's weekly leadership meeting. Our management team now spanned 3 continents, necessitating creative scheduling to accommodate different time zones. The Nairobi implementation is proceeding ahead of schedule, I reported. Early indicators suggest we'll see similar efficiency gains to what we've achieved in other regions, potentially with even greater impact given their resource constraints. That's excellent news, said Rachel Kimura, our Chief Operating Officer. The board will be pleased. Speaking of which, the acquisition offer from Health Systems International has increased to $340 million. They're eager for a response. This was the 3rd acquisition offer we had received in the past year. As Mediflow's impact and profitability had grown, larger healthcare technology corporations had begun circling, eager to add our innovations to their portfolios. My position hasn't changed, I replied. Mediflow remains independent. Our mission requires the freedom to make decisions based on impact rather than just quarterly profits. The financial offer was tempting. It would make me and our early employees wealthy beyond what any of us had imagined possible. But I had watched too many promising healthcare innovations get absorbed by conglomerates only to be watered down or redirected toward more profitable markets at the expense of broader impact. After the meeting concluded, I received a text from Vanessa. Heard about the Kenya launch from Dad. He's telling everyone about his visionary younger brother. How things change. I smiled at the message. My sister had become one of Mediflow's strongest advocates within the medical community, frequently connecting us with hospitals and healthcare networks looking to implement our system. She had even contributed to developing specialized modules for neurosurgical departments, combining her medical expertise with our technological capabilities. My parents had completed their own remarkable transformation. My father, now fully retired, from surgical practice, had established a healthcare innovation center at the University of Arizona, bringing together medical professionals and technologists to develop new approaches to healthcare delivery. My mother served as the center's community outreach director, focusing particularly on bringing innovative healthcare solutions to underserved communities. The Rivera Family Endowment for Healthcare Innovation, which they had established 2 years earlier, now supported 15 additional scholarships annually through the Mediflow Foundation. They had redirected not just their financial resources but their professional expertise and social capital toward nurturing the kinds of cross-disciplinary innovation they had once dismissed. As I prepared for bed, my phone rang. Professor Chen. Calling from Boston. I just reviewed the preliminary data from the Nairobi implementation, she said without preamble. The resource optimization algorithms are performing even better than we projected. Ebuka made some brilliant adaptations for unstable power scenarios, I explained. The system can now predict and compensate for outages while maintaining critical operations. Which brings me to why I'm calling, she continued. MIT wants to establish a Center for Global Healthcare Technology, focused on developing solutions for resource-limited environments. They've asked me to lead it, and I'd like Mediflow to be a founding partner. The proposed center would bring together engineers, medical professionals, economists, and cultural anthropologists to create technologies specifically designed for healthcare challenges in developing regions. It would also provide scholarships and research opportunities for students from those regions to ensure solutions were developed with genuine understanding of local contexts. "Send me the proposal," I said. "This aligns perfectly with our current direction." After we hung up, I stepped onto the hotel balcony, looking out over Nairobi's nighttime skyline. I thought about how profoundly my path had diverged from what my parents had envisioned when they had refused to support my MIT education. Had I followed their prescribed route, community college, transfer to state university, conventional job, none of this would exist. The rejection that had once felt so painful had forced me to develop resilience and self-reliance. The struggle to finance my education had taught me resource optimization more effectively than any classroom could have. The need to work multiple jobs while studying had honed my time management and prioritization skills that now served me as a CEO. What had seemed like obstacles had actually been formative experiences that uniquely prepared me for the challenges of building Mediflow. Perhaps most importantly, the experience of having my potential underestimated had made me passionate about recognizing and nurturing potential in others, particularly where conventional systems might overlook it. The next morning, I met with a group of Kenyan software engineering students who had been invited to the hospital to learn about Mediflow's technology. Many came from backgrounds similar to Foundation scholars, academically talented but lacking financial resources to pursue advanced education. "The system you've built is impressive," one student commented after my presentation. "But how does someone from my background ever get to where you are? The opportunities seem unattainable. 7 years ago, I was working overnight shifts at a convenience store to pay for textbooks," I told them. "I couldn't afford a flight home for Christmas my first year at MIT." Their expressions shifted from polite interest to genuine engagement. "Success isn't about starting with advantages," I continued. "It's about persistence, creative problem-solving, and finding people who recognize your potential even when others don't." I explained the Mediflow Foundation and our new initiative to expand scholarship opportunities to international students. "We're establishing 10 annual scholarships specifically for East African students interested in healthcare technology. The application portal opens next month." The excitement in the room was palpable. These were exactly the kinds of students the foundation had been created to support. Talented individuals whose potential might otherwise go unrealized due to financial constraints. Later that day, I received an unexpected email from my father, with a subject line that simply read "Full Circle." The message contained a link to an article about the University of Arizona's decision to rename their medical innovation program after receiving a substantial anonymous donation. The new name: the Reyes Center for Medical Innovation and Technology. The accompanying note read, "Your mother and I want you to know that this donation came from parents of a Mediflow Foundation scholar, a young woman whose medical technology startup has recently been valued at $50 million. She said supporting the center was her way of paying forward the opportunity she received when her own parents couldn't support her education. Thought you'd appreciate seeing how your vision continues to create ripple effects. With immense pride, Dad." The symmetry was both ironic and profoundly moving. A center at the university my parents had once insisted I attend was now being funded by someone whose life had been changed by the foundation born from their rejection of my chosen path. That evening, I had dinner with Ibuka and the Global Health Division team to celebrate the successful Nairobi launch. As we shared stories about our various journeys into healthcare technology, I was struck by how many of us had faced some version of the same challenge, potential that others had failed to recognize or support. When I told my family I wanted to study computer science instead of medicine, My uncle stopped speaking to me for 2 years, Ibuka shared. He was certain I was wasting my potential. Now he introduces me as his genius nephew who is fixing healthcare in Africa. Similar stories emerged from around the table. Parents who hadn't understood, guidance counselors who had steered them towards safer options, loan officers who had questioned their educational choices. Yet each person had persisted, finding alternative paths forward when conventional ones were blocked. It occurred to me that Metaflow had become a company of outsiders in the best possible sense. People who approached problems with fresh perspectives precisely because they hadn't followed traditional trajectories. Our innovation stemmed directly from our diverse experiences and unconventional thinking. The next morning, before leaving Kenya, I visited a small clinic on the outskirts of Nairobi, where we were piloting a simplified version of Mediflow, designed for facilities with minimal technological infrastructure. The system ran on a single tablet, using algorithms that required minimal processing power while still providing essential optimization capabilities. The clinic's director, Dr. Njeri, demonstrated how they were using the system to coordinate care for their community of over 5,000 people with just 2 doctors and 5 nurses. Before, we were constantly in crisis mode, she explained. Now we can anticipate patient flow, pre-position resources, and ensure our limited staff is deployed where they're most needed. It's transformative for a facility like ours. As I watched the system in action, the same core technology that powered sophisticated hospitals in Boston and London, now serving a resource-limited clinic in Kenya, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The rejection I had experienced at 18 had led to innovations that were now improving healthcare for millions of people across dramatically different contexts. On the flight back to Boston, I drafted an email to the Mediflow board outlining my vision for our next 5 years. The company had grown far beyond its initial focus on hospital operations in developed countries. Now we were positioned to become a truly global healthcare technology platform, with solutions spanning from sophisticated academic medical centers to rural clinics with minimal infrastructure. The email concluded, "What unites all our work, from Boston to Nairobi to our upcoming expansions in Southeast Asia and Latin America, is a fundamental commitment to optimizing healthcare delivery regardless of resource constraints. Our greatest innovation isn't any specific algorithm or interface. It's our approach to recognizing potential where others see only limitations." As the plane crossed the Atlantic, I reflected on the long, unexpected journey from that moment in my parents' kitchen, with my MIT acceptance letter, to leading a global company transforming healthcare delivery worldwide. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but each challenge had shaped Mediflow's evolution in essential ways. The parents who had once refused to support my education because they couldn't see the potential in my chosen field had become champions of cross-disciplinary innovation. The sister who had benefited from their favoritism had become a crucial bridge between technological and medical worlds. And I had transformed from a rejected student, determined to prove my worth, into a leader focused on creating opportunities for others facing similar obstacles. Sometimes the most meaningful success isn't proving doubters wrong. It's creating systems that ensure others with potential don't face the same doubts in the first place. 10 years after that painful moment, in my parents' kitchen, I stood on stage at MIT's commencement ceremony, invited to deliver the keynote address to the graduating class. In the audience sat my parents and Vanessa, alongside Professor Chen and dozens of Mediflow Foundation scholars. "The most valuable lesson I've learned," I told the graduates, "is that rejection can be the beginning of your most important journey." When my parents couldn't support my MIT education because they'd committed their resources to my sister's medical school, I had a choice: give up or find another way. The struggle that followed taught me more than any comfortable path ever could. I glanced at my parents, who nodded encouragingly. Mediflow now improves care for millions of patients globally. Our foundation has supported hundreds of students whose families couldn't or wouldn't fund their education. But the true success isn't measured in company valuations or even lives improved. It's in creating opportunities where potential meets possibility. After the ceremony, my father embraced me. "I was wrong," he said simply. "And I've never been happier about being wrong in my life." Sometimes the most powerful legacy of being underestimated is ensuring others never have to feel the same. Up. Next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.